Nanga Death is Wolof. And Wolof, people speak Wolof in Senegal, the Gambia, and Mauritania. And we are getting ready to listen to an interview from Kumasi. Kumasi is from Los Angeles, California. He grew up same area that I grew up in, and went to the same schools that I went to. He is, the Jamaicans say, a little bit younger than me. We were all born in, myself, Ron Wilkins, and Kumasi, all were born in 1946. And Kumasi is a great storyteller. He was in prison with George Jackson, and one of my next door neighbors, Lonnie Jackson, was in prison with George Jackson. Lonnie Jackson and George Jackson were knew one another, but we've had Lonnie Jackson on. Lonnie was married to Bonnie Pointer of the Pointer Sisters, and we all grew up in the same neighborhood. And we're going to listen to Kumasi, and this was from the Black Power Hour in 2022. And we will be back with Dr. Gerald Weber.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Black Power Hour. My name is Dr. Karin Stanford, and I am a professor in political science and Africana studies at Cal State University Northridge. Joining me in moderating this conversation and helping with technology is historian and archivist for the Tom and Ethel Bradley Center. He is also a doctoral candidate at Claremont University in history. The Black Power Hour is an outgrowth of the Black Power Archives housed at the Tom and Ethel Bradley Center. Currently, there are about 22 oral histories and photographs that make up the archive. The Black Power Hour aims to provide audiences with an opportunity to learn about the historical Black Power era in Los Angeles by presenting hour-long segments of conversations with former activists. These conversations are supported by the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences at Cal State University Northridge. We want to thank Dean Searcy for supporting this work. The conversations will go beyond the hour that we have scheduled. We expect that this one will end in 19 minutes. In terms of our agenda for today, we will begin with an introduction and hold a dialogue with our guests lasting about 20 minutes. The remaining time is allotted for you to join us in the conversation. Finally, before you leave, we hope that you will click on the assessment instrument in the chat and respond to the four brief questions. Kumasi is our guest for today. We asked him to participate because of his involvement and leadership in the California prison movement. Keith Rice will introduce our guest.
Thank you, Karen. Kumasi has been instrumental in hooking the Bradley Center up with many of our interviewees who participated in the Black Power movement, but he also has his own important story. He has been a member of the Slausons Neighborhood Club, which the media labeled a gang. He was featured in the documentary Crips and Bloods, Made in America with fellow Slausons, Bird and Ron Wilkins. He was a leading participant of the California prison movement and close associate of George Jackson. He also articulated the ideas of the 1970 Folsom prison strike and Bill of Rights Manifesto. Please help us in welcoming Kumasi.
I started off, I was born on the East Coast in New York, spent some time in DC with family, and then was brought on a train when I was about 3 years old to Los Angeles. And I grew up in LA. I don't have much of a school background. I got kicked out of Florence Bell Avenue Nursery School when I was 4 years old. And it wasn't for bad behavior, but I got kicked out of there. And then I got kicked out of St. Malachy's within an hour of my arrival. And I went to Russell Elementary School on Firestone. And then a few years later, we moved from 83rd and Hooper down to 65th and Hooper. And I went to Miramonte and Edison. And from after 10 weeks at Edison Junior High School, I wound up at Reese High School, which was a junior and senior high school, all boys school for young men who have been put out to LA Unified School District, but they're of the same age where they still have to go to school. So that was where we went at Reese, which was a disciplinary school and what they called the next step to prison. So
you know what, Kumasi, let me just say that you are highly intelligent, and you and I mean, my gosh, you have been in the forefront of making sure that we could get the interviewees we needed to build this archive. So we appreciate that. But as somebody who's highly intelligent, and you know, you come from a great background, very learned parents, how did you end up being kicked out of so many schools?
Well, I got kicked out of Florence Bell Avenue School because I was accused of calling a little white boy a nigger. And we didn't call each other niggas in those days. Those were their fighting words. So I can only imagine that he came to school and called me a nigger. And I said, "You a nigger too." And his mother came and complained and had him put me out to school. Then when I went to St. Malachy's, I tried to go to St. Malachy's School. And the same day I got there, first sister that was about maybe 3-4 years older than me, she was just teasing me about the little Buster Brown shoes I had on. They came in black and white, blue and white, and brown and white, crepe sole shoes. And all the kids had them on, but she was teasing me saying I had on girl shoes. And I said, "They're not girl shoes. Look at everybody else." I said, "Everybody wears these shoes." So anyway, we were going back and forth, and then this older white guy comes up and he grabs me and tells the other kids to stand in line and hit me in the stomach twice. And his little brother started crying because he didn't want to do that. So he said, "Well, let me show you what I'm talking about." So he hits me a couple of times. And there's a nun in the window leaning on her elbows watching this whole thing. So when all the kids walk away, I'm standing there by myself with tears coming down my face. And she comes up and she asks me, she said, "What happened?" I said, "Nothing." And she walks me over to the gate, tells me to leave the school and don't come back. So that's how I got kicked out of both of those schools.
So would you say that most of the trouble that you had in educational institutions were related to racism?
I don't know how, I mean, in a way, yeah, but it was just behavior, people's behavior, period. I mean, like I stayed in a neighborhood where you had white, Asian, brown, black. We didn't really make a distinction amongst each other. The guy that had the other kids jump on me, he was very close to people from my neighborhood. One day I was getting ready to attack him. I saw him walking and I was going to ambush him, and he stopped and talked to older cats from my neighborhood, some other Slausons, all right? And he was as close to them, probably closer to them than I was. So it's not that he was a racist. He was just a bully.
I see.
And he was such a bully, he got himself killed in 1959, because it was only a few years ago I found out what his name for. I looked for him all my life. I was looking for him like James Earl, like Conan the Barbarian was looking for James Earl Jones. And so at a funeral, I asked an older cat from my neighborhood, did he remember this white dude that looked like James Dean that played in the movie Giant, a handsome, wavy, blonde-haired white boy. And he stayed over there by Bunchy, and he knew all the older cats from Slauson. He said, "Yeah." And he gave me the guy's name. And I said, "Well, where is he at?" And he said, "He got killed in 1959. And it just broke my heart.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for explaining, some of the problems you had while growing up in Los Angeles. Tell us about the Slausons. You mentioned the Slausons. how do you define the Slausons and why did you become a member?
Slauson was a combination of, I would say, social club, drill teams, skate club, car club. But if you mess with them, they would jump on you and you would find out that they fought harder than any gang you thought was a gang out there. We didn't call ourselves a gang. The police called us a gang. We called ourselves a set, a neighborhood, and it was broken down into various clubs. Every clique was named as a club. And like I tried to explain to people, the whole concept basically came out of junior high school. When you join in junior high school, a Letterman's Club. And the Letterman's Club, they wore sweaters and they wore patches. They had an elite identity on campus, but everybody in the neighborhood that went to that school could not join the Letterman's Club, but you could all join Slauson. And so that's where we found our welcome among each other outside of the campus environment that taught us some structure in society. So the Letterman's Clubs had president, vice president, and a sergeant at arms or a secretary or somebody. Every breakdown club from Slauson, called a clique, had a president, a vice president, and a treasurer or a warlord sometimes. Okay, every other so-called gang in LA had the same thing. All the gangs on the west side, the ones from Watts, the ones from Compton, everybody knew when you had a confrontation with another neighborhood and that neighborhood had a formation that was called a gang, that gang had a president and a vice president, and you had to always know who their leaders was by name. And so that was our culture. And it wasn't any different than the East Side Kids, the Little Rascals, or the Bowery Street Boys. It just went from one generation to another. And, you know, as time went on and youth culture shifted from one place to another, it started becoming more and more extreme until you got what you have today in the gangs around America.
I got a question, Karen. I'm still trying to understand, and you've explained it to me several times, the cliques and the sets. What clique or set did you belong to? I asked that right.
The set is Slauson itself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Our boundaries were from Slauson Avenue on the north to Firestone on the south, from Alameda on the east to the Harbor Freeway on the west, originally. Eventually, we spread out into satellite areas. And so many of those became formed. And there was so many people in LA that wanted to be a Slauson because we were real popular. We were, I guess, the leaders of popular street and youth culture, in dress, in behavior, in style, in character. Everything about us was so attractive that you could say we basically were the most influential youth that pretty much drove youth culture. All right. And so we eventually had so many people from so many places in LA that we started calling Los Angeles Slaus Angeles. Okay.
But you were a flip. And what's a flip?
The clique that I belonged to was Flip Slausons. Yeah, and so we were pretty much like the third row, almost not the third generation, but kind of like the third row. Everything in LA in those days was broken down in age groups, just like in school. You had classes and you had grades and you had people that matched the age group with the grades. So the guys who were already out of school at this time, when I joined at 10 years old, those were the big Slausons or the original Slausons. Mm-hmm. The little Slausons were guys who were just about to graduate from high school, in 11th and 12th grade. Baby Slausons were at that time mainly in the 10th grade, just starting high school. All right, 9th and 10th grade. I was a flip, and so I was in elementary school at the time. And I was not supposed to have been a flip. I was supposed to have been a little flip, but the guys that I joined who were older than me, they hung out at the park. And so the flips actually started at the park, and I always ran with guys that was older than myself. So when I was 10, they had to be like about 11 and a half, 12 years old.
Okay. You know, Kumasi, I don't want to belabor the conversation about gangs, but I do think it's important, or neighborhood clubs. I think it's important for you to help people understand when we talk about Bunchy Carter and the Renegades and you as a flip, it was the same organization, right? It was just an aspect of the Slausons.
Yeah, the Slauson is like a big tree with a lot of branches. And so he started his own branch called the Renegades. He started off as a little Slauson. But I don't know, there was some contradiction between him and the other little Slausons, and he peeled off and started Renegade Slauson. He stayed under the umbrella of Slauson, but he created his own sector called the Renegades, and they were broken into Renegades and Little Renegades. The Little Renegades were just about my age, or a little bit, maybe a year or two older.
Can you correct the history about the number? I think I've read on more than one occasion that there were 5,000 members of the Renegade Slausons.
Not of the Renegades. If you count all the Slausons together, every group, every clique of Slausons spread out around the city, it was approximately 4,000 or 5,000 Slausons, but everybody didn't know each other, and we never took a head count. So that was what people assumed. They looked at it and they say, well, there's so many of them, it's got to be at least 4,000 or 5,000. So that's where that came from.
Okay. So so then you grow up, and then you, as a young man, you are incarcerated, which is where you became involved in the prison movement. So tell us a little bit about that. You don't have to go into, of course, why you were incarcerated, but upon entering the first facility, what was that like for you? Why did you become involved in the prison movement?
The prison movement was really led by Black militants who distinguished themselves from your traditional prison reform movement, which doesn't really intend to make that many significant changes in the lives of people who are prisoners living inside the walls of a penitentiary. So the prison movement became a radically different, and they call it a radical reform movement, led by Black militants. And that is because the white prisoners didn't have grievances. Their culture was, if the food had little insects in it, little black beetles or whatever, I forgot what you call these little black bugs that you would find in dry cereal sometime. As far as they were concerned, that was protein. If a white prisoner was going to be executed in a gas chamber, he was not going to complain. He was not going to seek any outside help to try to stop the execution. He was going to be very macho about it. He was going to lift his head high. He was going to say goodbye to the other prisoners as he was leaving death row. And he was going to take it in a very stoical manner. Okay. He didn't have to deal with racism because, he's white. He's a white prisoner. Okay. He didn't have to deal with any kind of discrimination or any disparity in condition or treatment And not only that, the worst things were, the more they liked it. We were the ones who created protest movements. And the reason why I suggested putting up the manifesto, because all of the different conditions that we were fighting against are in the manifesto. The manifesto itself defines the content and the parameters of the prison movement. And if you look at the manifesto and read the points of the manifesto, you'll see that we were fighting in prison against the same thing our people on the streets were fighting against. There's hardly any difference at all, except the people on the street, as we always considered, we would say that our people outside are in minimum security while we're in maximum security. And they're in minimum security, but they just don't know it. Okay, but there's points in the manifesto where we're demanding that judges legislate a rule against shooting at, shooting around, and shooting prisoners for no reason except recreation. So you got people out here being shot at, shot, and shot around, basically for somebody's recreation. And we demanded that whatever rules of conduct that govern those who were governing our behavior inside of prison, we looked at, and those rules that were acceptable by law, that they could kill us at will, randomly, for no explainable reason, and get away with it, and not be judged, not be punished in any kind of way. We demanded that those rule books that govern their behavior be looked at, and that changes be made. We knew if we changed the policies, we could change their behavior. And it wouldn't be like that 100% of the time, but at least if their behavior didn't change and they still conducted themselves that way, we could appeal to a court of law to bring them to justice, and therefore they could not do it with impunity. It's no different than the way we have to fight the struggle out here on the streets. The only difference was we were behind a wall. We were paying attention to everything happening to us on this side of the wall in the so-called free world. And at the same time, we're looking at what's going on with our people all over the world, in every country in the world. You got a lot of people here that are fighting for Black freedoms and justice for Black people here in this country, but at the same time, they don't see it's necessary that Black people in Africa, the Caribbean, and other parts of the world get their freedoms and their justice just like ours. They don't realize that if they don't have their freedom and they don't have their justice, then we don't have our freedom and we don't have our justice, because they're doing the same thing to us everywhere. We have to kill that whole system that allows all of that stuff to take place. And it's a systematic process. It's not just individuals. Certain individuals will break away from that system, just like certain individuals who working within that system will work against what they're doing that destroys our lives and our futures. So that's what the prison movement was made up of. That's why I say I would rather discuss the Folsom Manifesto. If we could just get into certain demands in that Folsom Manifesto, then you